Welcome to Business, powered by the Waterloo Region Health Network Foundation, innovating healthcare in Waterloo Region. Greg, we got a great show today. We have
We do.
one of our favorite people, and he's certainly the smartest person that we know, Joel-Denis Bellevance, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse. We're going to talk about the tentative deal, what it means, how it's affecting folks, and we'll have a couple of segments to talk with him about what the implications are. And of course, then we have our friends from the Waterloo Region Health Network Foundation and more wonderful stories. But just before we get to those interviews, one of the things that came up over the last 2 or 3 weeks was a newspaper front page story around who had applied for the region or the appointed regional chair job.
Yeah.
And I think basically everyone in the more or less had in Waterloo Region had said they hadn't applied for it or wouldn't serve because they're running for office. And I think Doug Craig was concerned about this, and I think this is now going right across the province. People saying you can only do one job. I can't be a mayor and a chair, as an example. And people across the province and through the chamber network, through AMO and others are concerned about this. So Doug Craig's got a motion. I think it's on August 26th, where the regional council they've made a statement that says no one should be able to be elected to one office and serve as regional chair. And frankly, I mean, there's politics and there's the conflict that might come from that. But for us, it's just bad for business. What we say, if that was to come to pass where one person had strong mayor and strong chair, it's bad for investment. It's bad for foreign direct investment. It's bad for solving the water issue. It's bad for it's housing and getting developments done, because I think we be having the potential for fighting amongst ourselves as a community when we need to be doing things together and competing against the province and globally, for that matter.
Let's call it what it really is, Ian. It's stupid. It's a
Yeah. Well,
stupid idea to think that you can take an individual that ran as the head of or part of a council within the region of Waterloo and then be able to serve in that position as well as chair of the region. The bias and the complaining and the pistol whipping that person would get around the horseshoe at the region would be absolutely ridiculous. I think if the province ever supported anything like that, they are opening up a can of worms that they will be very sorry they opened, because it will just go right across the province. They'll be blamed for 100% of the problems that'll come from that, and they'll wear it well, let me tell you.
yeah, and I mean, I have to believe. I mean, there's no one that could say you could like. We both been elected to office before. We've
Yeah.
seen what a mayor has to do. We've seen what a regional chair has to do. Those are full-time jobs, and you can't do both. I mean, just for
Right.
practical nature, you can't do it. Let alone we can't be fighting amongst ourselves when still got to solve the water
Yep.
capacity issue. We've still got to
Mhm.
get housing back on track. We need to get the land assembly done, and where's the next major employer? All of the
Yep.
things that our groups have been talking about at Best Waterloo and the Vision 1 million, if we got lots to do in
Yep.
order to be ready to be a million people in the next 20 or
Exactly.
25 years. And we certainly can't waste a moment having political fights internally. And so it's going to be, I mean, I'm looking forward to that resolution. I suspect it'll be passed unanimously. It dispenses with that from our region's perspective, but I suspect it will put that to bed and make people focus on the things that they want to do in their respective electoral races coming up in the fall.
Well,
So
well, if it's not approved unanimously, we know there's a snake in the woodpile.
well, I mean, that'll be a topic for business to business next
Yep,
week. But
for sure.
for I guess the thumbnail for all of this is we got big issues to solve, and we need everyone rowing in the same direction. And
Mhm.
fighting amongst ourselves would be devastating. So, okay,
Yep.
well, we'll come back to that, and we'll have lots of discussions in the coming weeks on trade and what the fallout is when we actually have the deal. But for now, we'll take a break. Say thank you to some of our partners and sponsors, and come back after the break with our good friend Joel-Denis Bellevance, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse. And we'll be back with more on Business to Business, powered by the Waterloo Region Health Network Foundation.
The Waterloo Regional Health Network Foundation is innovating healthcare every day in the Waterloo region. It is our collective responsibility to support our hospitals so that they can have the equipment necessary, not only to care for us, but to inspire the best and brightest healthcare minds to come and make a home right here in the Waterloo region. You may not need them today, but there will be a day when we all do. Reach deep if you can and give generously.
This segment of Business to Business is sponsored by the Workplace and Immigrant Network of Waterloo Region, a project by the Workforce Planning Board of Waterloo, Wellington and Dufferin, bringing employers and employees together.
Welcome back to Business, powered by the Waterloo Region Health Network Foundation. We are joined by the best smile, the best laugh in Ottawa, and he also happens to moonlight as the Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse. Joel-Denis Bellevance joins us because there was high drama, Gregory. There was poker, big stakes involved.
Oh, yeah.
With where we got to this past week with the potential for 50% tariffs on a whole range of things with Donald Trump. And it seems like we have a tentative deal with details still being worked out. But the question is this a good step along the way to having a more reliable trade environment between Canada and the US? And that's really what we have to answer right now, not if it's perfect, because perfect doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, JD, we spoke, over the last couple of weeks on this subject about the tariffs and more importantly, the August 19th tariffs that were avoided as a result of something making the President of the United States happy with the negotiations that were going on. But and I think, we talked a little bit about it before we went on. We don't know what position we're in at this point. We have no idea because we haven't got the details of it as of the time we're recording this show. But we do know, I think, that it's going to be better than what we had, because we know that Dominic LeBlanc and his team were pretty standing firm on what they wanted from Canada's perspective. So what do you hope to see, and what do you think you're going to see when this document is finally released?
Well, you're right in saying we don't have the final details, but there has been some information leaking through the media, and one of them is that the tariffs that have been imposed, sectoral tariffs on steel and aluminum, would go from 50 to 25%. So that's a reduction of half, if I may say. And then the auto sector would go from 25 to 15%. And that may vary because depending on the calculation you make on the origin of some of the parts used to build the car. But
so the content, the origin content. Yeah,
exactly. And we may see some movement also on forestry, on lumber, and some stuff on other like a dairy product, but it's not taking away or doing away with supply management. It's just a rearrangement of quotas that have been allowed to the United States. So all in all, the question I've been asking myself since these information have been trickling through the media is, are we better off today than we were last week? And are we in a better position than we would have been if the tariffs of 50% had been imposed on more Canadian products? And to me, the answer is yes. It's not a return to a total free trade zone with the United States, but I think we have to come to the conclusion or realize that it's not going to happen. It's a fantasy to think that we're going to go back to zero tariff in the United States because we live along the border and we're nice and friendly and we like to cuddle some bears at night. It's not going to happen. So tariffs are here to stay, whether they would like it or not. So the task of the government is to make sure that we pay the little as possible tariffs. And that's been the mandate and the goal of the government. And I think on this front, I think they have achieved their goal. Now, what do we give in return? If we have wine from California or bourbon from Kentucky back on the shelves in the LCBO, You will decide whether to buy it or not, or leave it on the shelves. So it doesn't make any difference. It's not a big concessions to me. If it doesn't do any difference if it's there, but we don't buy it. I'll give you an example. In Saskatchewan and Alberta, the booze from the United States have been back on the shelf for a year. But I saw a report last week that consumers in Saskatchewan do not buy in drove the products from the United States, alcohol products. They leave it on the shelf and they buy Canadian instead. So what, does it make a difference? No. So there you go. Like we boycott visiting Las Vegas, we will boycott the bourbon that is at LCBO.
Yeah,
I wonder, I mean, this is the art of, but this whole negotiation it's not a traditional negotiation. It's also how people react to it. For chief amongst it, how does the chief toddler in the U.S., Donald Trump, react to any of this? But in Canada, I mean, one thing Greg and I have been, I mean, I hear from businesses there and the community as a whole, no one's in a mood to give much to the U.S. So it's going to be when the details come out, the devils are always in the detail. And I wonder, JD, I mean, my sense is we'll have to wait to see how the public reacts to it when they see what's on it and say, do they think it's a reasonable step, whether they like it or not, but is it a reasonable step? But I'm looking towards seeing, what do the automakers associations say? What does the APME, our friend Flavio Volpe, and the Auto Parts Manufacturers Association, what about the unions like LIUNA and the auto workers? What about the steel producers? And what about folks, Greg, in our world, like the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, who are paying close attention to this and work with us all the time? Is what's their reaction for business as a whole? And I guess that, JD, is, will we really know, even when the details are released? It's probably going to be a few days before the reaction comes out and it settles out, and say, do Canadians think that Carney and his government made an appropriate step? To answer your question, are we better now than we were a week ago? And are we set up for weathering the rest of the Trump storm for the next 2 years?
Well, to answer the last part of your questions, I think I'm trying to demonstrate that we're in a better position now than we were last week. Is it going to be perfect? No. Will everybody be happy? The answer is no. But that's the nature of negotiations. You negotiate some stuff, you get some stuff, you don't get some stuff, and then some people will be very unhappy. And I think one of the person who will be not happy will probably be Doug Ford, because he was aiming for zero tariff on steel, zero tariff on the auto sector, but that's not going to happen with this administration and possibly, I would argue, future administration. Why? Because the United States has become addicted to terrorist revenues. They're in deep trouble financially. You see the bonds market going up for the United States, and that means trouble ahead for that government. They're looking for revenues. After only a year and a half of Donald Trump, they're digging a bigger hole every day. So they're really massively addicted to revenues from tariffs. They're not going to give it up, even if it's a Republican that is re-elected or a Democrat Party that is elected. Remember, I've heard nobody from the Democratic Party that they want to do away with tariffs. So that's something to remember while we think ahead, while we plan ahead. And the other thing is that I want to mention is that we have to, I think, get away from the mentality that we are under siege from Donald Trump. Yes, he's trying to undermine our economy, but as to quote somebody that really, I think, is doing a great job, the Natural Resources Minister, Tim Hutchins, we've got cards, and let's play those cards to our advantage. And one example of that is, the very first shipment of oil from Canada to Japan, and having a tweet from the Prime Minister of Japan celebrating that arrival of that oil, and talking about LNG shipment, and also small modular reactor coming from Ontario. So there you go. This is only one example in Japan. I could list also Germany, that signed a contract this summer to buy $30 billion worth of natural gas from British Columbia over the next 20 years. And I could add Poland, that is looking at nuclear technology from Canada. So we've got cards. We just have to play it wisely so that we can say, Mr. Trump, take a hike.
Yeah, and I think what else is kind of interesting about that is that there's actually already a plan to, and they're moving forward with the plan to expand the Trans Mountain to add another 300 or
Yeah,
400,000 barrels a day.
900. The
Nine
current,
hundred.
when we build another one, there's going to be 9 to 1 billion
Mhm.
barrel
Yeah,
a day, and expanding it. You're right. Trans Mountain is about
yeah.
adding 300,000 barrels a day. You're right.
Yeah, so the plan is already in action of getting servicing more of our Asian friends and customers over there. So I think that's really important.
Reliable customers and friends.
Yeah. Yeah, their checks don't bounce. Like I'm sure the Americans are going to start bouncing soon. But anyway, the other thing though to remember, JD, is this is a this is a temporary fix because the
Yeah.
reality is we're actually in a phase where we now have to, because Donald Trump wouldn't sign on to extend the original Kuzma agreement, we're now into annual reviews. And so I think the move forward from here is to stabilize things a little bit
Yep.
and then move into more deeper discussions around Kuzma. And maybe that will find further relief down the road in some of these tariffs on the auto sector as well.
Greg, that's an excellent point you're making. And that's the exact comments that I got from the PMO in background yesterday when I was talking to them about the deal that was being contemplated. So you're right. It's to stabilize what we have as a commercial relationship with the United States, trying to lower as possible the tariffs that have been imposed on sectoral, on critical industry like aluminum and steel and auto and lumber, and then try to stabilize the next big one, the
Yeah.
umbrella under which we operate, CUSMA,
Yeah.
which is Canada, U.S., Mexico free trade deal, and then see what we can do with it.
Yeah.
But we need to stabilize this. And it's funny you mentioned that, but talking to the PMO people, they were saying to me, can you imagine the amount of energy we're spending on trying to limit the damage from the United States? That if we were using that energy to do something else, like preparing the investment summit that will be happening in Toronto, like we could have signed the deal with Churchill 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
so it is taking a lot of energy from the government and trying to fix that problem with the United States.
Okay, just one last question, and then we'll take a break and come back on the other side because there's more to get to around the fallout from some of this. The Carney government is, so whatever deal that they've signed, JD, is it your sense that we're going to have to see, there will be, I mean, by definition, I think we've all said there's going to be some winners, there's going to be some losers, or some people in between who it's not great, but it's not bad. Is the Carney government, do you think, because they've already put some programs in place to support sectors that are adversely affected by this, is this where the Carney government is going to have to do its hometown politics, or it's the home team version of how do we support sectors that won't feel as this is a win? Like, is that what the next wave to try and bring and shore up support of saying it's the best we could do now, we can move on to Kuzma, and here's how we're going to support you until we get a more permanent solution? Is that what's coming down the road?
You're absolutely bang on. That's the kind of the comments that I've been hearing also from the government sources, that this is going to be, stabilize the kind of relationship we have in the United States, lower the tariffs that are been hitting our big industries, and then help the other industries that are still being affected by those commercial practices from the United States that are illegal against Kuzma to try to survive during this difficult period. So, as we speak, the finance minister, François-Philippe Champagne, is obviously working on his next federal budget. I expect that budget to be tabled in November. I think it will show that the economy is being more resilient than we thought. So more revenues will probably be available, even though we're in deficit. More revenues will be used to support critical industries. And so we'll see. But it's going to be a rough period for some industries in Canada. Let's not fool ourselves. It's not going to be the case, and first in my mind is the auto industry, because we know, talking to Flavio Volpe, the Ontario Manufacturing Auto Parts. I believe that's the correct title.
Auto Parts Manufacturers of Association. Yep.
Yeah, he said the margin is slim, so having tariffs at 12.5% is not going to help the industry. So there is going to be some negotiations on that one, and some compromise and some concessions will have to be made by the government on this industry to help that industry survive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back after we say thank you to a couple of our sponsors, and we'll touch on the other parts with JD of tariffs and what it means for local business and the path forward. And we'll be back with more on Business to Business, powered by the Waterloo Region Health Network Foundation.
The Waterloo Regional Health Network Foundation is innovating healthcare every day in the Waterloo region. It is our collective responsibility to support our hospitals so that they can have the equipment necessary, not only to care for us, but to inspire the best and brightest healthcare minds to come and make a home right here in the Waterloo region. You may not need them today, but there will be a day when we all do. Reach deep if you can and give generously.
This segment of Business to Business is sponsored by the Workplace and Immigrant Network of Waterloo Region, a project by the Workforce Planning Board of Waterloo, Wellington and Dufferin, bringing employers and employees together.
Welcome back to Business, powered by the Waterloo Region Health Network Foundation. We continue to be joined in our conversation with Joel-Denis Bellevance, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse. We talked about the deal or the tentative deal from this past week. We haven't even touched really on the Churchill deal between the Ontario government, Quebec, and Newfoundland. We'll come to that in a second. But Greg, the annual reviews coming for CUSMA, there's a whole bunch of things that continue to. This will be. It doesn't like the issue hasn't gone away, but it allows us to kind of maybe get to a more stable relationship and footing for the other big things that are happening in Canada.
Yeah, and before I get to that, I just want to hand out a congratulations to Ian McLean, because after 5 weeks of this change now in the new format, he's finally got every segment right. So congratulations.
It only took 5 weeks. I'm feeling proud of myself today.
You absolutely should, because you've been absolutely stellar and perfect this week. But in any event, I think I want to make a comment though, JD, and I'm really kind of interested in your comment about it. I think that this deal, while it is likely the very best that could happen, and it's probably, as you rightly stated, we're better right now than we were at this time last week, I think this is going to haunt Carney. I think there's going to be a fairly significant swath of the Canadian public who actually believed he was going to be able to knock out of the park zero tariffs and everything is going to go back to normal. And I think while we all knew that that's unrealistic, I think a lot of Canadians thought that that's what would come out of this. And I think it's going to hurt his brand going forward into the fall.
It's a possibility that we can't rule out, but I think given that a year has gone by since the last federal election, and then Mr. Carney promised to solve quickly the Canada-US trade file, it hasn't happened, and he made concessions. We don't see any effect of that in the polls so far. He remains quite firmly in command in the first place. His party also is very popular. He is popular, and he's bringing it. Is party up. So it will depend on what kind of explaining he does, what kind of education maneuver he goes to explain to Canadians why this is a good deal. And at the same time, I think he needs to also say that while we're trying to fix the complicated commercial relationship with the United States, we're also deploying many efforts to reduce our reliance on the United States by building alliance and trying to find new markets for our product. And I think the Churchill Fall deal of this week is one example of that. I mean, this is going to be a massive undertaking. The federal government helped, broker a deal between Quebec and Newfoundland and Labrador that will bring lots of jobs, lots of clean energy. In fact, Mr. Carney was saying that this is bigger news for Canada than the negotiations with the United States because of the long-term effects on Canada's prosperity that this Churchill deal will bring along. And also we'll be able to export more energy maybe to where? To the United States. So you see all the dynamics that is building into this. And it's magnificent in the sense that this is nation building at its best. You've got a possible future pipeline out west to serve the interests of Alberta, and British Columbia got some money to deal with the big issues and got along with the idea of having another pipeline that would be going along Trans Mountain. But all the while, you've got also a deal for clean energy that will maximize, the potential of Churchill Falls to the benefit of Newfoundland, Labrador, a province that I dearly love, and Quebec, the province that I so dearly love. So it's going to be a fantastic adventure if this deal materialize. And this is nation building at its best. Yeah. And all the while, we've got also, a deal to sell more uranium to India for Saskatchewan, a deal to maybe sell small nuclear modular to Poland for Ontario, and the project to build a high-speed train linking Quebec to Toronto. What better examples do you need that this is national building at its best that we have not seen in decades in Canada?
Yeah. And I think one of the things I was going to say, I mean, the Churchill is both an environmental, big step forward for the environment, but it's also if we all believe that electrification of for industry is a big component of environmental progress. This is a huge development, not just in dollars, but in supporting the Canadian economy, as you said, in exports of electricity to the U.S. But the pipeline discussion and the ports that are being improved all lead to. We're actually seeing, and you referenced the Prime Minister of Japan. We're already seeing where some of these investments in big infrastructure is already starting to. New markets are opening. There's prospective new deals being signed, which will speed the actual execution of some of these infrastructure projects. And I wonder. When because I don't disagree with Greg, there will be a variety. I know I'm half out of the screen there. I
love it when you disappear.
I know it makes me half as big. That there will be criticism of the Prime Minister, but he'll have the talking point of saying we've got this deal and we're doing nation building projects that supports every part of the country.
Yeah, and it's a critical element of the strategy. You say you fix the United States-Canada relationship, but also diversify markets to get closer to Europe and get closer to Asia through exports of natural gas and oil. And there are also other things that will be announced in the coming months. And one that may upset the United States and will have to be managed properly is whether Canada will buy more F-35 or whether we're going to turn to Sweden and buy those Saab Gripens. So this is a critical decision. And I know it's not an easy decision. In my mind, it's easy. I know where I would go. But because of the implications of that decision, Mr. Carney is being very cautious. But I expect, here's my prediction, I expect the Carney government to say, we love the F-35, but we need for our own goods to be less dependent on the United States, and we'll go with the Gripen and build those planes here in Canada.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the important play now is it's almost Donald Trump's play. It's saying, look, we're not going to deal with you because you don't build anything in Canada. We're dealing with the guys who are going to actually bring and build stuff in Canada. That's exactly what Trump's trying to do. So why would Trump look at that as saying, oh, that's not fair? Not fair. That's exactly what you're trying to do. You tried to lure our aluminum industry into the United States. You can't do that.
And I want to make a point that I think it's related to that you're making. You know, Donald Trump was pushing countries, NATO countries, to invest more in defense, 5%. To what purpose? So that those countries would be forced to buy from American
Right.
for American companies to build their own army or build
Yep.
defense. But Europe decided, yes, we'll increase the spending, but we're going to build in Europe. So his goal
Yep.
of making Europe more dependent on the United States is actually not working, and we need to follow the same path as Europe.
No pun intended, but that backfired.
Yeah. Well, and you know, when the president's playing X's and O's as opposed to three-dimensional checkers, but no one ever accused him of being smart.
If I may quickly say this, though,
Yeah.
in terms of the negotiations that we've seen between Canada and the United States, I think we need to underline the calmness that Dominique LeBlanc, the minister responsible for U.S. Canada-U.S. commerce, Dominique LeBlanc has stayed really calm. Did not push the panic button.
Yeah.
Stayed calm, and so we had the best person in Washington to deal with those guys. They're not easy to deal with. They're unpredictable. So you needed his temperament and his intelligence and his diplomacy to the full extent that he has to be deployed in Washington to make this deal happen, if it is happening still.
Yeah.
One of the things back to the talking about, you know, the what's Carney going to do to support industries that are hurt. Sometimes it may be out of defense spending, and I think we've heard Flavio Volpe a number of times say reindustrialization can be defense spending or things that roll, whether it's personnel carriers, other things where we already got the industrial capacity in Ontario. Maybe it's not autos, or some of it will transition to defense spending. I mean, those have got to be some of the decisions, to your point, which is he wanted to force everyone to spend more on defense, and we're doing that, but we're also going to be buying Canadian. And I think that's going to be that's going to be one of those things the Prime Minister is going to have to hold firm on to support Canadian jobs during this transition. So it's going to be fascinating to see.
Okay, I want to add something else. Breaking news for you guys. The Prime Minister just spoke to the President of Mexico and trying to make sure that those countries are aligned while they're trying to renew CUSMA. So that's breaking news. That means after talking to the provinces, after talking to the industry, the Prime Minister now is talking to an ally so that Canada and Mexico work together in facing with the United States.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Well, okay, just one thing on that, and then we'll let you go. I mean, is the American philosophy going to be to try and separate Canada and the Mexico on the CUSMA negotiation? Because that was what their deal was on these sectoral tariffs. Yep. I mean, is this somewhere where Mexico and Canada have got to be joined at the hip so we don't get euchred by the Americans?
The Americans tried to do that. Jimmy Singh was saying that Canada was not cooperating, and while Mexico was more collaborative. So they were trying to to put us apart, but it didn't work, obviously, because the Prime Minister has a great relationship with the President of Mexico.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you for breaking news. You always do that here on Business to Business. We appreciate it.
Excited about next week because we'll actually be able to debate what actually was in the document.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, are we better off this week than last week?
Yeah.
We'll know. We'll know. All right, we've been joined by our good friend Joel-Denis Bellevance, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse, and we'll be back with more on Business to Business, powered by the Waterloo Region Health Network Foundation.
The Waterloo Regional Health Network Foundation is innovating healthcare every day in the Waterloo region. It is our collective responsibility to support our hospitals so that they can have the equipment necessary, not only to care for us, but to inspire the best and brightest healthcare minds to come and make a home right here in the Waterloo region. You may not need them today, but there will be a day when we all do. Reach deep if you can and give generously.
Welcome back to Business, powered by the Waterloo Regional Health Network Foundation. And of course, right off the top, we've got Dr. Bill Kaliai. Kaliai, did I get that right?
Yeah, it's Kaliai, but no problem.
Kaliai?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks very much, Doctor, for, I know we are out of town, but you're on your way back home now to work, but you're the busiest guy in town on most days. And we thank you for taking the opportunity to join us this morning.
Yeah, pleasure.
Listen, of course, everybody understands that the emergency department is probably the busiest department. on any given day. And a lot of it has to do with um, overdose calls that come into the emergency department. What are the first critical steps your team's got to take to stabilize the patient? We hear a lot about, oh, just give them naloxone and those kinds of things, but there are other measures that, certainly if they show up at emergency, that your folks would have to jump in and do.
Yeah, of course, we can provide Narcan in the case of like narcotic overdoses. I mean, overdoses, they come in, uh, like patients experiencing overdose come in different ways. When obviously, if someone isn't breathing or has no pulse, we'll resuscitate them to try and restore their pulse and bring them back to life if possible. But really, overdoses come in many different variations. Obviously, some people are quite ill, like I just described, but other times people come in walking and talking and experiencing, other symptoms, vomiting, nausea. There can be a wide variation.
Well, yeah, it's I think obviously from a community perspective, it becomes very, very concerning because you don't know, members of your family that could be potentially experimenting or whatever the case may be, or maybe, in the closet with things like this. And I think it's really important we understand what the measures need to be taken when you experience this. How does the nature of drug poisonings then in the emergency department? How has it changed over the recent years? Because at one point it was obviously there, but it wasn't as highlighted as it is today.
Yeah, like I think just from my own experience, I think we're seeing a resurgence of like narcotic use and narcotic overdoses more recently. Like in the last 6 to 9 months, we've seen many mixed overdoses. A lot of the street supply of illicit opioids is cross contaminated with other drugs nowadays. So we're seeing the effects of that definitely in the community.
Yeah, yeah, it's a shame. Stigma, of course, remains a major barrier for people seeking help. I talked a little bit about, those people that are maybe hiding in the closet with respects to it now. But how do healthcare workers in the ER work to build, some trust with patients experience substance use disorders? Because I think some people might come in with that problem, but still try and hide it, even from you, who can recognize it right away what the problem is, but they want to hide it and say, I don't have a problem. This was just a mistake or this was just an accident. But how do you folks deal with people to really have them come to the realization and maybe seek other support or other help?
Yeah, it can be very challenging. Like from our staff perspective, our staff are taught to provide non-judgmental care for sure, for any patient with a substance use disorder, just and manage them like anyone else. But for sure, people carry their own feelings on it, and if people are in denial or have guilt about it, they may not disclose disclose that to providers, which definitely does make it more challenging for us to make a diagnosis and provide the appropriate help. I think for patients that are thinking about seeking care, if you need it, just come to the hospital and see our staff. Ultimately, we are there to help you, and we're not there to judge you or make any comment about what you're doing. We simply just want to make sure that you're on the right track, becoming more healthy.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's the important message, Doctor, that you don't you're not there on a mission to convert everyone. You're on a mission there to help everyone, and if that happens to be, the methodologies to get them away from it, then that's wonderful. That's absolutely great. But really, there is no judgment when you walk into the emergency room. It's about care and the quality of care that your folks can offer.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's really interesting. What message do you have for family members or friends who are worried about a loved one, but feel maybe helpless? And I think I've talked to a number of people who have said, you know, they don't know whether they should do an intervention or whatever the case may be, because that might backfire as well. But how do you what message do you have for family members that are experiencing this right now with a loved one?
Yeah, if you have a loved one that's experiencing a substance use disorder, it's very challenging for sure. Treatment works best when your loved one's a willing participant in their care. When it's not, it's very stressful for everyone. But if, regardless of where your particular situation, if you or your loved ones are experiencing a substance use disorder, there are lots of treatment options available. You can find like our list of various treatment options if you visit the Waterloo Region Public Health website. They've got lots and lots of various programs, both for the patients as well as their families and loved ones. So you can start there.
Oh, thanks very much. You know, this is really obviously it's a bit of a perk for us to have somebody certainly from the emergency department, but to have the chief of staff from the emergency department is even better. So we certainly appreciate you coming on this morning. We've been joined by Dr. Bill Kaliai, who is the chief of emergency at Waterloo Regional Health Network found and here in support of the foundation. So thanks very much, Doctor.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
Always great information from our good friends at the Waterloo Regional Health Network Foundation. Well, that's all the time we have for Business to Business this week. I want to remind you, check out our websites, thegreaterkwchamber.com or cambridgechamber.com for all of our upcoming events. You won't want to miss any of them. And of course, stay in touch with b2bwr.ca. That's B, the number 2, bwr.ca for all of our upcoming episodes here on Business to Business, powered by the Waterloo Regional Health Network Foundation.